Hi, my name is Sherie Guess, and I'm here with Peter Seaman and Greg Kaminski. And today we have Bret as our special guest.
Yes. Hi. Again, my name is Bret Rickman. I teach mathematics and statistics at the PCC Sylvania campus, and now especially online as well for several years now.
Bret, what are your strategies and your approaches to providing feedback as it relates to integrating instructional tools and activities that engage students?
Where this kind of started for me was in teaching my statistics class. I like to be able to give my students feedback immediately when they were doing what I call lab work or group work in the classroom. And I used to use Socrative.com to poll students to give them some feedback immediately on whether they were getting numeric values correct. So I wanted to find a way to be able to have my students check their numeric results inside of the D2L environment. And I thought, well, the quiz tool seemed like a good one to use within D2L, but the connotation of a quiz tool puts a bit of fear in students, and that's not a good thing. So I wanted to find another way besides the quiz tool to give students some feedback. And I found that the survey tool would serve a good purpose for me because I wanted a low stakes feedback for my students. I don't even really grade these. I just look at them. So I started using the survey tool to do what I did before externally to allow students to check their numeric results.
Great.
Bret, quick follow-up question about the survey tool. The survey tool in D2L, as you know, is a tool that doesn't allow you to give any right answers for things. So maybe you could just describe how the feedback actually happens for the student, because I'm interested in hearing what the mechanics of that look like.
Well, I set mine up as a multiple choice, and for each of the choices, there'll be one correct choice, and I give feedback for each of the choices. So if the student chose the incorrect numeric answer, I would say, oops, that's not quite right. You need to look at it this way. So I'll give them some feedback to kind of direct them to the correct answer, and they can keep choosing. Usually I have four choices. One of them I'll say, great, keep up the good work. You got the correct answer on this one. And the other three, I'll give some sort of feedback that says, oops, not quite right. Here's what you need to do to correct that potentially, or go back and review this section of the book so that they know whether they got it or didn't get it correct for each of the four choices. And again, they can keep choosing within the survey environment. So it's kind of cool. I don't really get to the advanced questions. That's what's in the rest of my lab when I do it. So the more comprehension level questions they get later. These are just, are you getting the right numeric answer or not? Yeah, they could choose all four if they wanted to and eventually get the right one. But I'm okay with that because this is very low stakes.
Is there a way for students to show their work or show what they're doing?
I don't use it in that way. I have students document their work in their group activity or lab sheet. So they can't earn full credit unless they document how they got that numeric answer, so they can't just put an answer on the document that they actually turn into me. And I'll give students feedback on my lab document also, or that I have the activity sheet, and say, well, you got the correct numeric answer, but to get full credit, you need to show your work, okay? And then I also allow them to correct their lab document so they can always go back and fix it.
I just have a follow-up question also about the mechanics of that setup, because I think that maybe people who would want to replicate what you're doing would be interested in it. My understanding of the survey tool is that there's no way to designate a choice as a correct answer, but what you can do is you can give feedback by each choice that someone provides, but the student gets the feedback only upon hitting submit on the question, right? And is it done sort of like per question within the survey itself, or do you have to submit the entire survey to get the feedback?
What I've found in trying this out myself is as soon as they hit a choice, they get feedback on it. So if they hit a wrong choice, say, oops, you got the wrong one. And you can click another one right away. Since it's a survey, it allows you to kind of change your choices, if you want, or they get feedback immediately no matter what. They don't have to submit each individual question. But during each individual question, they get immediate feedback and they can keep switching. So far, students have always got to the right one. So I like that part of it. They get feedback like that on each question. And so in the end, when they submit their survey, it looks like they got 100%, which is great. Students kind of like that too,
So Bret, I was wondering if you could show us what the feedback looks like in the survey tool within D2L.
Sure. Let me share my screen here. And this is from the Can Dogs Sniff Cancer Module 1. All right, so here's question 1. And I like to give a graphic with each question if I can. It keeps the students a little closer to what we're doing. So my question is, what is the population proportion, or P, that you choose that models the situation? And I've got my 4 choices here. So as students would choose a question, let's say they say it's 0.3. And my feedback shows, okay, it says, oops, please try again. Remember, Maureen had a total of 5 choices. Only one was correct. Maybe they'd click on 0.2. That was like, great, you got it. Nice work. So that one, they could tell right away that they got it. If they hadn't chose 0.2, if they just skipped down to 0.1, they'd get more feedback again immediately like this. It says, oops, try again, blah, blah, blah. And then 0.4, similar feedback. So that's how students would see the feedback instantaneously for each question on that.
Thank you, Bret, for explaining how everything works. It's very interesting. I have another question. My question is about student engagement. How would you say that these practices that you've been trying out in your online classes have affected student engagement? Are students more engaged, less engaged, or about the same as they were before?
I'd say there's definitely more engagement. Most of the students actually are doing the survey. Not all students do. I don't make them do it. It actually helps them if they do, but I see the majority of the class is actually taking the survey. So that's a good start. Before I used the survey, I used to get some feedback from students. It's like, gee, I wish we would have gotten some feedback on those questions on those labs so I know if I had it right or not. So I don't get any of that anymore. So that's a pretty good sign that they really are using this proactively on their own time. And the other part of student engagement really are the last 2 questions that I had on each of the surveys of what's clear to you, or what was the clearest to you, and what points or what concepts are still muddy. They're the last 2 questions I don't set up as multiple choice. It's an open response kind of question. And what that does from my standpoint is I can give them feedback right away. So I try to keep track of that each day, see how they're doing. I can send them a quick email on that. And that has improved engagement a lot, throughout the week, not just at one time when I'm assessing all their work, that kind of thing. So get feedback then too, but I can give them on the fly feedback. So those 2 things in terms of engagement, I think have helped a lot.
Thanks, Bret. That's really helpful to find out how successful that technique has been for you in your class.
Well, thanks, Bret. It sounds like a great opportunity for students to self-reflect on their learning, what they've learned through the week, and for you to provide some more prompt feedback. Excellent. So I have a question. How has it supported or improved your work as an instructor in the online learning environment to be using this method and the survey tool?
I can give feedback more quickly to students, and I think it's so important to do that. And they see that I'm actively participating with them throughout the week. And in an asynchronous class, students would tend to feel like, who's this instructor? I don't even know who's doing it. Is it a machine or what? That kind of thing. It personalizes the course more. They get feedback from me right away, immediately. And so I think as an instructor, that's helped me a lot to make my presence aware to my students throughout the entire week. Now, in an asynchronous environment, I think it's so important that we are in touch with our students throughout the week so they don't feel like they'll sink or swim all week, They know I'm available in various ways, and this is just another way that I'm available to them.
I'm sure your students have really appreciated it. I imagine that student learning has improved in the class because of it, and that probably in turn saves you some instructor time as well.
Correct. My students have been doing quite well, and that's good to see. I'm not making my assessments any easier, but I think anytime you can get students' feedback as often as possible, the better it is for them, no matter what, from a teaching and learning standpoint.
Great, thank you.
So, Bret, what might you recommend to others who might like to experiment with this on their own?
Another good question. This survey tool could be used in different ways for different content areas, okay? But I think experiment with the survey tool to see what it'll do. What I did, I first had to do a little learning about the survey tool. And then I just started playing around with it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and the students will give you feedback, say, I really don't like this. That question could be changed this way or that way. the way I look at it, that's going to happen. And when I get that feedback, then I say, yeah, that's valid. I'll go in and change it. I'd say get started, and keep it simple at first as much as possible, and think through the basic elements that you want your students to get and how you can get them feedback right away.
Thank you, Bret, for coming today and sharing all of these great strategies and approaches to learning in support of our students. It was great having you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Brett. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Bret.
Thanks for the questions. We'll use the survey tool. It's a good tool to use for this type of application.